You ever meet someone who seems perfect at first? Confident, charming, magnetic, everything about her pulls you in, but somewhere in the back of your mind, something feels slightly off. You can't explain it. You don't have proof. It's just a quiet instinct telling you there's more to the story than what you're being shown. And if you ignore that instinct, it can cost you time, emotional energy, and sometimes even your self-respect. This isn't about judging someone's past. It's about recognizing patterns that may affect your future, because people reveal who they are, not through bold confessions, but through consistent behavior. One pattern to notice is comfort with intimacy that feels unusually fast. Chemistry is normal, attraction is healthy. But when emotional and physical closeness escalate before trust has had time to build, it's worth slowing down. Real connection develops in layers. It takes time to feel safe, to open up, to gradually let someone in. When there's no pacing and when vulnerability is skipped and intensity jumps straight to closeness, you have to ask yourself whether it's genuine connection or just familiarity with the script. Some people aren't afraid of intimacy. Others are simply used to it happening quickly. There's a difference. Another sign is an emotional wall that never fully lowers. She may laugh with you, talk with you, share stories, but when conversations move toward deeper fears, long-term values, or painful experiences, something shifts. The answers become vague. The subject changes. Humor replaces depth. Healthy boundaries are normal. Everyone opens up at their own speed. But if weeks turn into months and you still feel like you're outside looking in emotionally, that distance matters. You shouldn't feel alone while sitting next to someone. Emotional availability isn't about oversharing, it's about reciprocity. If you consistently open up while she keeps certain doors locked, the imbalance grows quietly over time. Then there's attention. Pay attention to how she manages attention from others. Having friends of the opposite sex isn't the issue. Social circles vary. The question is about boundaries. Does she maintain clear lines, or does she keep multiple men in her orbit in a way that feels competitive or undefined? If her phone constantly lights up with messages from men who clearly have interest beyond friendship, and she encourages that dynamic, that's not insecurity on your part. That's misalignment in values. A relationship requires emotional exclusivity, not constant outside validation. If you feel like you're competing for basic reassurance, that tension won't disappear with time. It will grow. Another subtle pattern is when intimacy becomes transactional. Closeness should be an expression of connection, not a tool. If affection increases only when tension needs to be smoothed over, or disappears whenever she wants leverage, that's not emotional maturity, that's conditioning. Healthy intimacy flows from mutual desire and emotional safety, not as reward or punishment. Pay attention to timing. Consistency reveals truth. There's also a difference between emotional intelligence and emotional control. Some people understand others deeply. Others learn how to manage reactions to maintain power. If you start to feel like your emotions are constantly being guided, praised when you behave a certain way, subtly criticized when you don't, that's not passion. That's influence. And influence without transparency becomes manipulation. Real connection doesn't require you to feel slightly off balance all the time. Another area to observe is how she speaks about her past. Everyone has history, everyone has experiences, but notice the tone. Is there reflection, growth, ownership? Or are all past relationships framed as the other person's failure? Maturity shows up in accountability. If someone has no sense of privacy or discretion about intimate details, whether it's oversharing about former partners or discussing personal matters too casually, it can signal that emotional boundaries aren't clearly defined. And boundaries are what protect relationships long term. If something sacred becomes routine, it loses depth. Finally, look at patterns in relationship history. Short relationships happen, breakups happen, but when every connection follows the same arc, intense beginning, rapid escalation, sudden ending, that's not coincidence, that's a cycle. Long-term relationships aren't sustained by chemistry alone. They require conflict resolution, patience, and the ability to stay when things are no longer new and exciting. If someone has never remained long enough to navigate that stage, it's fair to question whether they're prepared for it now. None of these signs on their own prove anything. And this is important. This is not about labeling someone. It's not about shaming anyone's past. It's about compatibility. Patterns matter because patterns repeat, unless consciously changed. Attraction can blind you to misalignment. Hope can convince you that you'll be the exception. But exceptions are rare when behaviors are consistent. The real question isn't how many people someone has dated. The real question is whether their habits, boundaries, and emotional patterns align with the type of relationship you want to build. You don't need to interrogate, you don't need to accuse, you simply observe. You move slowly, you watch for consistency between words and actions. And most importantly, you trust your internal signal. If something feels off repeatedly, it deserves attention. Strong standards aren't about control, they're about self-respect. If you want depth, choose someone capable of depth. If you want loyalty, choose someone who protects boundaries naturally. If you want long-term stability, choose someone who has demonstrated the ability to build it. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about her past, it's about your future. You're not responsible for rewriting someone else's history. You're responsible for deciding what patterns you're willing to accept in your life. And once you see clearly, you have power. Power to continue, power to step back, power to choose better. That's not judgment, that's awareness. And awareness is what protects your time, your energy, and your self-respect. If this gave you clarity, reflect on one pattern you may have ignored before. Sometimes the lesson isn't about them. It's about finally listening to yourself.